Welcome, I'm so glad you're here to eat homemade with me. I'm Jamie and welcome to my kitchen. You have arrived on one of the best days because although it's a little stormy outside, it's raining, we've got wind, we've got all sorts happening outside, it's cozy and comforting in the kitchen because we are going to make the most beautiful, divine, comforting apple and cinnamon scrolls that you have ever had. They're not stodgy and doughy, we're not using flour and yeast, so we don't need to worry about waiting for things to rise. We're simply using everyday basic pantry ingredients like flour, we've got some sugar, we've got some butter, and of course sweet, spicy cinnamon and these beautiful red apples. I want to show you how easy it is to create something that is going to please everybody. I have got some hungry teenagers arriving in about 25 minutes, so let's get started and make some beautiful buttery apple and cinnamon scrolls. They're literally just so easy to throw together, and it's only going to take me a few minutes to prep these. So I'm going to start with my flour and my baking powder. So I've got 350 grams of flour and I've got my 3 teaspoons of baking powder in here already. To this I'm adding my soft room temperature butter, and we want to mix it in with our fingers almost until it's a breadcrumb texture. I've got to be honest with you, I don't always do it this way. Sometimes I just melt my butter and I just put it in and mix it. But this is the traditional way of making this scone-like recipe. So we don't want any lumps of butter, and once we've got it all looking like a breadcrumb, we can go ahead and add our milk. So I've got about 225 mils of milk going in here. If you find that your mixture is a little dry, you want to add just a little bit more milk. If it's a little too wet, sticking to your hands, then add a little bit more flour. Now that it's come together like this, I'm going to use my hands and just sort of knead it together so that it becomes one nice big ball of pastry or dough. And that's looking perfect. This is just how we want it to look. I'm going to add a little bit of flour to my bench and then just kind of push it down and get our rolling pin out, add some flour to your rolling pin and make it into sort of a rectangular shape. So you don't want your dough sticking to your bench, and you don't want it sticking to the rolling pin. So if this is happening, just add a little bit more flour. And you can see under here, it's just a little bit sticky, so no problem. I'm just going to put a little bit more flour under here because we're going to put quite a few toppings on here, and we don't want it to be all stuck to the bench when we chop it up and we want to put it in our baking dish. So now that it's rolled out, I'm going to go ahead and make my filling. So we want our butter for our filling to be nice and soft, but definitely not melted. So I'm going to pop it in the microwave just for 10 seconds and then I'm going to check it. If you do happen to over melt your butter, you can pop it in the fridge, let it go firm again and start. So this is just how we want it. Definitely not melted, it's just nice and soft. To that I'm going to add my sugar, and I've got about 60 grams of brown sugar going in here. And then of course we're going to add our cinnamon, and I like quite a lot of cinnamon in my recipe because this is a big family recipe. So I'm adding 3 good teaspoons of cinnamon. Again, you could start to play around with this recipe. You could add different spices, you could add some mixed spice, a little bit of ginger. And this is how we want it to look. It's almost like an ice cream consistency. Now I'm going to go ahead and prep my apples. So I always save all my scraps for our goat because she absolutely loves apple scraps. And don't be too fussy when you're peeling your apples. If you leave a little bit of the skin on, that's fine. It adds to the whole rustic, homemade look. And that's what we want cooking to be. We want it to be nice and simple and easy again. It's just got too complicated. So let's simplify things. Now I'm going to dice up my apples. I just want to show you, I think I'm probably going to do about 1 centimetre squared apple pieces, but again, let's not be too fussy. So my pieces are just looking like this. And we're going to go ahead and do that to the whole rest of my 2 apples. You could use 1 large apple if you wanted to, whatever you've got on hand. Now that my apples are done, I'm going to spread my sweet filling onto my base. It's a little bit like putting, prepping a pizza, isn't it? That's how we want it to sort of be. We're going to spread this around so that it's almost touching the sides. And now that looks fairly even, I'm going to go ahead and add all my apple pieces over the top. These are just lovely sweet apples, so they're going to keep their shape when they cook, but they're going to have a lovely soft, sweet texture as well. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and we can roll this up. Now I've done it sort of the wrong way. I should be facing myself, so I'm going to have to I'm going to have to be a bit careful in rolling this up, but you would do it so that it was facing you. It would be much easier. Give it a little bit of a squeeze as we're coming around, but it's going to stick together fairly well. I'm just going to move it so that I can cut it better and show you how I cut it. So we need a really nice sharp knife for this, and pop it onto a chopping board if you don't like to cut directly onto your bench. I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half, and then I'm going to cut it in half again. This is how I'm going to make sure my pieces are relatively even in size. So I've got 4 pieces, and I'm going to cut these into 3 pieces each. Just like that. That's looking fairly even. And then we're going to have 12 pieces. Like I said, this is a nice big family recipe. This is going to feed everybody. And then we can go ahead and put them into our dish. I'm using my round, like my pie dish, but you could use a rectangle. You could use even a tray to bake these on. It doesn't really matter. As long as they've got a tiny bit of room to spread out, they can all be touching. They sort of just find their space within this as they cook. So again, we don't need to be too fussy. We're just going to pop them in. Just like that, everybody found a little bit of room, and like I said, it doesn't matter if they're a bit squished like this and there's some spaces. They're just going to find their own space within here. You'll see what I mean as soon as they're cooked. And it's only now that I will preheat my oven because I want these to rest a little bit while the oven is preheating. And then I'm going to pop them in and bake them for about 20-25 minutes until they look so beautiful and golden, just like this. So they'll be springy on the top when you touch them, they'll spring back, but they're going to be just so nice and golden. So these are beautifully cooked. You'll be able to smell the cinnamon and the apple filling your kitchen. Now I know it's going to be a bit hard, but we have to leave these alone. We have to walk away and let these cool for about the next 20 minutes so that our icing isn't going to melt completely on top of them when we add it. And you can see everybody found their space in there, didn't they? Now that we've left them for about 20 minutes, we can come and make a beautiful vanilla drizzle to pour over the top of this. So I've got 200 grams of icing sugar in here, and to that I'm just going to add a teaspoon of my vanilla essence. This is a super easy drizzle icing. And then I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of warm water to start with, and then add a little extra as I need it, just to make it the perfect consistency that will just drizzle over the top. Okay, this is just how we want it. Not too runny. If it's too runny, it's going to just pour and sit at the bottom of the tray, and we don't really want that. If it's a little thicker than this, that's fine too. But this is just how I like my drizzle to be. So let's go ahead and pour it over the top. And there's no right or wrong way of doing this. It's just, we love that rustic homemade look. And once you've poured on your icing too, you can add something to the top. Sometimes I put a few slivered almonds. You could put some sprinkles, chocolate chips. I don't know. Just see what you've got on hand and you could add something to the top. I'm just going to leave mine like this at the moment. And there we go, we're all done. So we'll let these set just a little bit longer, but I can hear everybody coming right now. So these aren't going to last long. I wish you could smell how beautiful and sweet they smell. They're an absolute crowd pleaser. I hope that you'll give them a go. Truly easy. And like I said, you can change up the filling. You could even make these into a savory dish. Be creative, and I love to hear your ideas, so please share with me. And they pull apart so easily as well. Look at that. You don't even need a knife. Everyone's just going to get in there with their hands. Let me move the camera so you can take a little bit of a closer look. And because they're scrolls, as we pull them apart, you're going to see all the beautiful filling inside, like a beautiful pastry from the bakery.